The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Fourth Book. The Story of Kurt von Superman. Chapter 15. When I reacted, after perceiving one of these messages, my first impulse was to ask something else to the voice, to interrogate about the interpretation of the message, or about the same voice. But it was useless, because the voice disappeared as mysteriously as it had appeared, and I just obtained silence for answer. However, when I was not thinking on it, and I was meditating about something in the ambit of the history, the philosophy or the religion, appeared the fugacious comment, the wise and aglow word, as a spark of wisdom. That difficulty of communication with the voice, instead of disappointing me, it stimulated my curiosity, and it took me to a brief quest of information about so weird phenomenon. The inner ear had been opened when I was presented to the Führer, due to the powerful influence of his presence, and then I left with Dad to Egypt to pass some vacations, as I said before. It was during those days that I tried to reveal the mystery of the furtive apparitions of the voice. For it, I began to read all what referred to cases similar to mine, realizing with horror that, until a few years before, anyone who experienced the audition of voices became suspect of witchery or demonology. The image of Joan of Arc, the maid of Orleans, burning in the stake for following the dictation of an inner voice, not resulted a very pleasant incentive to deepen in the matter. But, thinking that we were in another century, encouraged me, in an age open to the investigation and knowledge. Even if I warned after every step that I made in the field of the psychic experience abounded the superstition and skepticism. Reading the works of Allan Kardec, the founder of the modern Spiritism, I verified that, amongst the multiple forms of mediumship, described as common for many gifted people, figured an intuitive mediumship, which I believed that could be compared to the phenomenon that I was experiencing. According to Allan Kardec, a medium is a person that can make contact with the world of the spirits. What is a medium? Is the being, the individual, that serves as bond for the spirits, so they be able to communicate with men. Without medium, there's no possible communication, being this tangible, mental, written, physical or of any type. And also says, a spirit is a man without physical body. The mediumship, as human faculty is presented in relation to the senses, being an extension of these, that permits to embrace a part of the other world. Thus, there is an auditory mediumship, a written mediumship, etc. Not accepting for it, the spiritist cosmogony that affirms, as do the gnosis, the alchemy, etc. A triple composition of man, body, soul or spirit, and spirit, one, can stop to analyze use the phenomenons that the spiritists mention, almost always real. This was what I did pointlessly on those days in Egypt, going around many spiritualist centers, and interviewing me with numerous mediums. The disillusion could not be higher, because, in the majority of the cases, the medium was a person with low intellectual capacity, incapable to explain clearly the nature of the prodigies realized by him, or, on the contrary, the medium was a rascal, too clever to give explanations, and rather pleased to be surrounded of the halo of mystery. The conclusion that I extracted from those explorations was resumed that when the subject was real protagonist of a mediumistic phenomenon could not exert any control over it, being in the generality of the cases a silly. The writer medium was not conscious about what he was writing, abject situation which notwithstanding filled with joy to the witnesses, who affirmed that it constituted the proof of the veracity of the prodigy. The same could be said about the other types of mediumship. The talking medium, totally possessed by the spirit, or disembodied entity. According to the spiritist jargon, he spoke, laughed, bellowed, or contorted before the contemplative ecstasy of the acolytes, as ignorant as insensates. And the hearer medium, who awakened my particular interest, heard, but not one but a concert of voices. And these invaded him in every moment, ordaining demanding or begging determined actions, many times dishonorable, or coarse. Something depressing, that had nothing in common with my superior experience. Convinced that for that path, I would only find fanatic or sick people, I did the most logical that someone can do in these cases. I started to search for a solution to my problem by myself, by my own analysis and experience. Thus, reviewing rigorously the psychic processes that culminated with the apparition of the voice, I verified that the key was not in the mental interrogation, in to ask to the voice this or that. In my confusion, to which the contact and observation of the spirits not contributed little, I believed that the voice responded to proposed questions in my consciousness during the meditation. Taking arbitrarily this belief for a truth, that concluded that it would be possible to ask consciously to the voice, that is to say, that I would ask and the voice would respond. Crass mistake, as you will see immediately. The meditation of all these allowed me to comprehend that the interrogation is an attitude intrinsically rational. It means that it is only possible to interrogate from that alternation that we call reason. Of all the existent creatures, only the man interrogates, and he makes it to know, to obtain knowledge. Expression of his miserable ineptness, and the drama of his ignorance, the interrogation, starting from the reason, the logic, permits him to emit inferences, propositions, and make judgments. But the knowledge obtained, exclusively from the reason, by the interrogation to the reality of the world, entails a violence and rebellion. The interrogation carries implicit the possibility of an answer, and this implication, there is something superb and arrogant. Interrogates, who proudly knows that will be satiated on its knowledge. This rebellion, this pride, the arrogance, at last, this violence that lies behind in the interrogation is, of course, totally useless, every time that it doesn't facilitate the liberation of man from his incarceration to the illusory forms of the matter. The moral error of the interrogation, as means to know it, is evidenced in all its absurd contradiction. When man affirms the right to ask, it means, when he establishes that it is juridical, and morally licit, and even advisable to practice the interrogation, absurd possibility that guides inevitably to the negation of God, atheism, to confess the impossibility of this question, agnosticism, or the most perturbing hypothesis, which are just that, probable answers, but not real answers. The gnosis, philosophical current that BELICENA VILLCA referred enough, affirmed the possibility to be saved by means of the knowledge, gnosis, but this knowledge must not be obtained in a rational manner. As Serge Hutting said, the gnosis, possession of the initiates, is opposed to the vulgarists, belief, of the simply faithfuls. It is less a knowledge than a secret and mysterious revelation. The gnosis constitutes, once it has been reached, a total knowledge, immediate, that the individual possesses entirely, or lacks at all. Is the knowledge itself, absolute, that includes man, the cosmos and the divinity. And, is just through this knowledge, and not through the faith or actions, that an individual can be saved. Exists then, another way to know, and, even if an obscurantist conspiracy has erased the gnosis, and its initiatic wisdom from the official history, was in the Gnostic way, that I found the solution to communicate with the voice. Is that, effectively, there is a form to obtain knowledge beyond the reason, without falling into the mechanic of the question and answer, of the comparison and the conclusion, of the analysis and the synthesis, at last, of the dialectis. And, it is extremely simple. Consists to dispose the spirit to remember, in analogous form to the attitude assumed by the consciousness when it searches for a memory. In this case, it is not about to adopt a contemplative posture, of a mind in blank, but of a dynamic action, that searches, without ask. The wisdom to comprehend this, lies in to accept the fact that the consciousness is swiveling, a dressage towards zones of the mind. When we desire to remember something, the reason can interrogate or not, but the memory comes relentlessly. For example, what tie did I use, in the party of John Smith? And the answer comes automatically, the green tie. but let's be honest. Is this a real answer? When we wanted to know which tie was, we disposed the mind to search the memory of the party of John Smith, and this memory appeared in the consciousness as an image that was promptly translated by the reason in form of proposition, the green tie. Because, if instead of asking, we just evoke the memory of the used tie, this will appear, without being necessarily the answer to a question, neither a proposition. When I checked this, and verified reliably that at remembering, the consciousness is directed towards the memory, I disposed analogously my spirit to talk to the voice. At the beginning, I had no success, mainly because the reason interfered with doubts and skepticism, but when I focused well, and I could recreate in the mind the fugacious moments in which the voice interrupted, then I started to progress. The voice had appeared and disappeared in an instant, with a higher velocity than the faster of thoughts, at the point that, sometimes, I not distinguished clearly the words. For this reason, I had to reach a high level of concentration, and evoke the remembrance, just evoke, not interrogate, dispose the consciousness to befall the remembrance, and remain in complete spiritual immobility. Who understands this, will comprehend that it was not a contemplative attitude, but an energetic attitude of energy, similar to the one of the warrior an instant before releasing the arm with the sword, full potential force. In the contemplation there is peace, stillness; in the evocation, there is expectant energy. The employed procedure with success can be explained thus. I recreated in my spirit the moment in which the voice appeared. I was trying to make this memory as exact as possible. It means to transport me psychologically to the climax, lived during the experience. The voice came, the remembrance of the voice, as fast as I remembered that it appeared. But then, utilizing the recently discovered errantator power of the consciousness, I directed this towards the voice, I repeat, as who remembers, and thus, I achieved to extend imperceptibly the time of the manifestation of the voice. The voice emerged, I the remembrance, and I was trying to get the remembrance around it, cutting the accessory, focusing only on it, trying to convert the fleetingness, impermanence, without losing its vocal dynamic for this reason. Therefore, I went achieving more each time, to follow the message of the voice from its apparition to its extinction. The apparition, beginning, doesn't worry me, but the extinction yes, because I was extending more each time the last moment of the voice, until I reached to hear, with complete clarity, the final tone, the precise limit between the voice and silence. Reaching to that point, I felt in the consciousness, for being so directed towards the voice, as if would have been a conical and acute prominence, as a funnel seen from the side in which the liquid is thrown. The voice had penetrated in my mind through a point, the inner ear, and there pointed the vertex of the psychic cone in which the consciousness was converted at chasing tenaciously the instant of the final extinction of the message. I went practicing that kind of selective evocation, when, at examining, in some manner it must be said, the psychic cone, suddenly, I saw myself precipitated in a tunnel slightly spiraled and vaporous, as a vertex of bright and milky energy, that prompt concluded with an image perfectly defined and clear. I could see and hear at the same time, because there was from whom the voice emerged. Following the voice on its extinction, as an echo, I had arrived to its source of origin, and this was glaringly and blinding. Provided now, not just by an inner ear, but also of an inner vision, I participated enraptured of the sublime igneous image. Because such wonderful and marvelous work was not emitted by any throat, neither it came of any human entity, or just anthropomorphic. It just emerged from a tongue of fire that twinkled rhythmically, accompanying the becoming of that verb. O cold and shining fire, God has witnessed that in you, I have recognized the divinity of the Hyperborean spirit. In front of the divine presence, made of fire, voice and wisdom, I didn't commit the foolishness to interrogate, neither I had surprise nor desire to know or comprehend. A wild happiness, a primordial joy, was invading me, while the igneous legus shone under the inner sight. And, that ineffable joy, obeyed to a certainty. I had recovered something lost long time ago, I didn't know to say when or where. But, with security was about it, because the flamboyant presence was not unknown for me, although in some mysterious way, I had forgotten it, until that moment. And the happiness of the reunion filled my spirit of an indescribable pleasure. I ignore how much lasted such first ecstasy, but, I remember clearly the knowledge that remained in my consciousness as a sedimentary stratum at the end of the experience. I say, knowledge, because of making telepathic contact with the mysterious voice, I acceded to a torrent of wisdom, I wouldn't know to name it in another form, that at penetrating in the spirit, dissolved every doubt, turned worthless any question and joined, and synthesized the opposites. This occurred thus, because the voice, authentic legus, which substance was constituted by the fire and word, transmitted it were by the mere fact, to enter in contact with it. And what said the voice in that occasion? It would be an awkward pretension to describe with words such transcendental experience, but, I will run the risk, and brief and imperfectly, I'll resume the essential parts of the message. I am a being belonging to the ancient race, that came to the earth with Lucifer, millions of years ago. I've been called angel, but, this is an ambiguous denomination. I've been one of the great Hyperborean leaders, and as such you have known me, in a remote past that, however, is always present in the mystery of the pure blood. By my Hyperborean name you must call me Kiev, because, thus, will recognize me the humanity at the end of the Dark Age, or Kelly Eager. You were united to me, as are the countless spirits chained by the symbol of the origin, the link that connects the created with the uncreated. You, and any of them, can reach to me, and to the origin of the race of the spirit, resolving the mystery of the labyrinth, crossing the illusion of the created forms, returning to the path of the pure blood, as you have done now, without comprehending it. There, in the origin, exist other beings like me, belonging to the race of the spirit, who have been also called angels. But, in reality, all come from Venus, the door of Venus. You can communicate with me whenever you want now that you know how to return to the origin following the path of the pure blood, but you mustn't do it, if you have not obtained to understand the mystery of the labyrinth, and be owner of the space and time. Otherwise, my presence will act as a drug, that will put to sleep your incipient spiritual consciousness. You're a victim of the great deceit. You believe that you are, and you almost don't exist beyond the caprice of Jehovah Satan. While you don't return consciously to the origin, there where you are now without knowing it, you must not come to me, because you can miss the path. First, you must know what you already are, you must return to the beginning, whence you have never left, recover the paradise that you never lost. When you be capable to resolve this mystery, marching through the path of the labyrinth, and reaching to the exit, just then, you can say I am. But do not be afraid, you won't be alone, you will be guided charismatically to the end. Follow the closed circles of the Order of Tool, but don't stop in any one. Go ahead always, until the penultimate circle. There we will meet again. And finally, try to interpret this with wisdom, my advice and guide. In the planetary order first the Führer. In the individual order, first Rudolf Hess. Therefore, follow Rudolf Hess, inspire you, in Rudolf Hess. I had achieved to resolve the mystery of the voice, reaching to its occult source, the divine Kiev, but, once fulfilled this wonderful psychic feat, it was forbidden to me the re-establishment of the contact, provoking me a strange feeling of sadness. Respectfully unable to contemplate the twinkling sphinx of Kiev due to, I accepted it tacitly, of my imperfection, I just desired to save the obstacles that separated me from the penultimate circle of the Gleichzeitigkeit, where I would be authorized to re-establish the telepathic link with the origin. I was thinking in all these, when the train was taking me rapidly to Pomerania, lamenting, because I didn't find Rudolf Hess in Berlin, to entrust him what happened, and consult him about the divine Hyperborean Kiev.